Good evening, guys. Good evening, everyone. So, the previous session we discussed requirement gathering, right? Non-functional requirement gathering, which we classified into general, architectural, and business, and we discussed what are those, right? Now, so once we get the requirement gathering, once we get the response from the client, right, for these requirements, non-functional requirements, the next stage would be in the performance test lifecycle. What is the next phase, guys? What is the next phase in performance testing life cycle?
Test plan and
right. So once we collect the requirements from the client, right, non-functional requirements, we prepare a test plan document, and we need to share the test plan to get approval from the client. We need to share it to the client to get an approval, right? Now let's see what all goes into a test plan document. What does a test plan document contain? Okay. So these are the main components of any test plan document, right? So we prepare a Word document. I will share some test plan document samples to you. And we share it to the client for approval. The client has to give a formal sign off for that test plan. So what does the test plan contain? Is the first one is project overview. Project overview, or what is the objective of doing performance testing? So why are we doing performance testing, or what is the objective of doing performance testing for that application? And the next section is application architecture. What is the architecture of the application, right? So we already discussed what is meant by application, what is meant by architecture, isn't it? So what is meant by architecture, guys?
Pictorial representation.
Yeah, diagrammatic representation of
2-tier and 3-tier.
All the software components.
Components.
Right? All the software
Components, configuration hardware.
And all this, right?
Yes.
So that application architecture. So who will provide this application architecture diagram? How do you get this application architecture diagram?
Cloud architectures or system architectures, those members will develop.
What is that?
Cloud architect or system architect, those persons will give the architecture.
Right. So in the architecture, in the requirement gathering phase, we ask that is one of the requirements, right?
Client
so
will provide this.
So you remember we
client
asked
will provide this.
Here. Yes, client will provide that. Okay. So where does it is part of architectural requirements, right? So we'll ask the client and get it somewhere here. So that will be one of the non-functional requirements, right? In which technology the application is developed, what type of application it is, which database is used, right? Which application server is running. So you will get the architecture diagram from this, like, you should ask the client to share the architecture diagram. And what is the objective of doing testing, right? What is the objective of doing testing? Where do we have that? I think we have it in the general requirements, isn't it?
Yes, sir.
Right? What type of test should be done, and what are the goals of performance testing? So this is where, in response to this question, he will tell like what is the objective of doing performance testing for that application, isn't it? Right? So you will get all these requirements, and you will put all those details into a test plan document, right? And signed off NFRs and performance test scenarios, signed off NFRs, non-functional requirements, whatever we collected from in the requirement gathering phase, right? So we'll keep all those requirements, non-functional requirements, into the test plan document. And the performance test scenarios, we already asked this in the business requirements, isn't it?
Yes.
In the requirement gathering phase, we asked the client have you identified the performance scenarios of your application, isn't it? So we'll keep all those performance test scenarios also into the test plan. So these are what we are going to cover, right? Mentioning that these are what we are going to cover. And next section is performance test approach. When I say approach, like, it will be goal of each individual test, entry and exit criteria. So what would be our performance testing approach? How do we do the performance testing? How are we planning to do the performance testing? And what is the goal of each individual test, right? Suppose you say like we are going to do like slow load test and soak test. So you mentioned like what is the purpose of that each individual test? What is the entry and exit criteria? Okay. What is the entry and exit criteria. And test environment details and the scalability. Test environment details means we'll provide like the the access details of the test environment, and the scalability percentage. Scalability percent means, you remember like we discussed that
Future prediction. Future prediction.
No. So this is not about that load projections. So this is about the environment, test environment.
Okay.
So if you remember, like ideally the performance test environment should be an exact replica of production. You remember that, right? So what if the client doesn't have test environment which is identical to production? Let's say, for example, here you have 4 application servers in the production environment, right? And in say in test environment, you have only 1 application server or 2 application servers only, right? Now scalability means like what environment. So sometimes they may provide a downscaled, scaled down environment. We call that as a scaled down environment. And how much is that scalability percentage is like 50%. So test environment is, let's say, for example, 50% of the production environment. So that is what that percentage refers to. Scalability percentage refers to. Understood? Clear, guys? That is what the scalability percentage means. Sometimes client will provide a scaled down environment. Only when they provide scaled down environment, you have to mention what is the scalability percentage. You will mention that test environment is 50% of production or 25% of production, something like that. So based on the those numbers. Understood, guys? Yes or no?
Can you please explain, sir?
All clients may not be having like exact replica of production for test environment. Okay, in that case, like they may be providing a scaled down environment. That means they may not be having budget to set up same environment, same number of servers, same investment into the test environment. Then they may provide like 1/4 of the production environment. They may provide a test environment which is 1/4 of production. Now you'll mention that the test environment is 25% of production. So that's what that scalability percentage means here, right? And then test data. So here in this section, you will mention that like you will in the requirement gathering phase, you ask like what are the dependencies on the test data and all this. You remember? See, are there any specific requirements for the input data validation like credit cards, zip codes, data uniqueness, and is the data time sensitive? You ask something over here, right? So here you will mention that like who is going to provide the test data, whether client is going to provide that or whether we are going to prepare the test data, and all those factors like if there is any time sensitivity or if there is your data uniqueness required, means can we reuse the data or can't we reuse the data, right? You will mention all those test data details in this section. Clear, guys? Able to follow? Guys, able to follow or no?
Yes, sure.
Yes.
Right? And the next section is risk assumption issue dependencies. The next, so what are the risks involved, right? Let's say, for example, if the application is functionally not stable, if there are functional defects, major functional defects, so we cannot proceed with the performance testing. So that is one risk, right? So we list out all the risks involved. What are the risks involved, and a risk mitigation plan and assumptions. What we are assuming that the application is we will be having a stable environment, right? And we will be having no major functional defects. That is again one of the assumption. And issues and dependencies. And if you observe this, I have highlighted the first character in each word, right? So this is called as RAID matrix, RAID, RAID matrix. Okay, where R stands for risk, A for assumption, I for issue, and D for dependency. I'll share you one sample test plan document. Just give me a moment. First, let me open this test plan document. So this is a sample test plan document which is available over internet. However, this is very long document. It's having around like 30 or 40 pages. Okay. So instead of this, it's almost 30 pages. It's 30 pages document. Okay. So this is a performance test plan template and results template. Okay, so either you can use this or each organization will have their own template. If you have some organizations will be having their own templates, ready-made templates, and you can use those templates. Or else, I prepared one simple test plan document consisting of 7 to 8 pages only, but it covers almost all the important points. Yes. So here you can see this is the introduction, and in the introduction, like we will discuss, like we'll mention like what is the objective of doing testing, and what is the system architecture, what is the application architecture, what is the purpose of doing this performance testing activity, right? What is in scope and what is out of scope, right? What is in scope, what we are going to cover as part of performance testing, and what is out of scope, right? And what are the deliverables in each phase. This is a simple document, a straightforward document, so which is good enough, like if you don't have uh, any template with you, right? So you can follow this, you can use this template. This is a simple test plan document. Okay, and what are the deliverables means what are we going to deliver to client in each phase. Okay, so in the discovery and planning phase, we are going to share requirement gathering questionnaire, performance test plan, and business scenario flows document, right? And the test development, we are going to share the performance test scripts, and test execution and reporting, we are going to deliver executive test summary report. And in the closure phase, like you are going to submit the closure document, handoff or closure document. Handoff or closure document means we'll prepare a Word document with all the details, project details, and we will give it to the handover to the client, right? And in all phases, we are supposed to share the daily and weekly status report. So these are the deliverables in each phase. Next, performance goals and objectives. Okay, and test execution process. And what are the SLAs? Average response time of the transaction should be in the below range. So some performance criteria and response time SLAs and test execution process. How do we execute a test, right? What are the steps in executing a test? What is the entry criteria? Read here what is meant by entry criteria. For discovery phase, performance test requirements for the project are identified, and deliverable is requirement gathering phase. And for the test plan phase, critical business transaction scenarios to be tested are defined. Test estimation is provided. Type of test to be performed is decided, right? And approved and signed off performance test plan. And these are the deliverables in this test plan phase, right? So this is the entry criteria and exit criteria and transaction details. For example, like what are the critical business flows? You can put it in a table, or else you can give a Excel sheet kind of. You can prepare Excel sheet kind of, and high level test cases. Yeah. So here you can provide. So here you will give you what are the critical business flows. For example, login, just login and navigation, and some ticket booking kind of, right? You'll give at a high level here, and you'll give the detailed steps over here. So scenario name to test. For example, this is login and navigation. So you give the URL and credentials, and then what are the steps, right? So in that way, if it is a ticket booking, right, you will log in, and you'll go to home page, login, and then search availability, book ticket, make payment, log out. So you will provide those step-by-step navigation over here. And what is the performance test strategy? For example, which tool you are going to use, right? And all these details, right? So you can go through this, all the points are self-explanatory. Here you can see what are the best practices that will be considered, what are the different types of testing that we are going to do, and all this. So load test pattern, and I will share the Excel sheet to prepare graphs like this. If you want to share some graph like this, right? I mean, how you are going to ramp up the user load and all. I'll share that Excel sheet with you, this ramp up pattern Excel sheet with you. So you just enter the numbers here, it will automatically plot the graphs. Okay. I think I have shown you one more graph, right? You remember that? Ramp up pattern. I think we have one more. 1 second. After this rate matrix, right? So next thing is like what is the project plan and timelines? Means so at when do we start scripting? When do we start test executions? And what are the milestones and timelines, right? So we'll mention those in the test plan document. Very important interview question. So what is a test plan document, and what are the different components of a test plan, or what does a test plan document contains, right? This is one of the important interview questions. Okay, and non-functional testing team member contact. That means like one person will be acting as a POC, point of contact from the performance testing team. So we'll provide the contact details of that person, official email address, right? We'll provide that in this team member contact. And in scope and out of scope means what is in scope, what we are going to cover as part of performance testing, and what are we not going to cover. That will be mentioned in scope and out of scope. And one sample test report also can be provided in the test plan document, so that they will have an idea, and we are setting right expectations by sharing this document, and we are by getting an approval for the test plan, right? So we need to get a sign off from the client. Once we share the test plan document, once we prepare it and share it to the client, right, we should ask the client to give a sign off over email. Means, so client should send a reply to that email saying that okay, we are good with this, or else he may suggest some modifications, right? So you have to discuss that, and you have to finalize a test plan document. So these are the different components of a test plan document. So once we get a approval from the client, right? Once we get a approval for the sign off, then we'll go to the next phase, that is scripting phase. You remember performance testing life cycle, right? Once we get a sign off from the client, right, we will start scripting. We'll start developing the scripts, right? Here, guys, are any queries?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Now, before starting the script, right? So let me cover a few more theory questions or theory part for a couple of days. Okay. So before starting the scripting. So basically, like this is to once you are strong in these fundamentals, right? So your scripting will become easy, right? It will be a cakewalk for you if you are strong on these basics. Okay. So few performance testing basics or fundamentals that I want to cover is, what are the different types of protocol? What is a protocol? First of all, what are the different protocols, right? And what is request HTTP, some HTTP basics, and what is request response cycle? What are the different request methods? Okay, I'll cover that, and then I want to give a weekly assessment for this week. Okay, so we have half an hour more time, right? So I'll try to cover as many contents as possible today, and I want to give our week 1 assessment. All right. So first, let's understand what is HTTP, what is HTTPS, and FTP. You know this already, right? Most of you know this. What is meant by a protocol, guys?
Set of restrictions.
Right, set of rules for set of instructions
and
for
restrictions.
communication between your browser and server, right? Or the communication language between browser and server, isn't it? And now, what are the different protocols? These are the important protocols that you should know. First one is HTTP. It stands for Hypertext Transfer Protocol, and it is a protocol used for communication between web server and browser. When I say browser, it can be also called as client, right? Client, we can also call that browser as a client, right? And it is a stateless protocol. Stateless protocol means request doesn't know anything about the previous request. Any request doesn't know anything about the previous request. Ignore that, not required. This is required for developers. Okay, you need not remember and all those. But what you have to remember is the standard port number of HTTP is 80, right? And it is the communication protocol between your browser and server, one of the communication protocol, right? Next comes HTTPS. So where HTTPS stands for Hypertext Transfer Protocol Secure. S stands for secure here, right? And encrypted HTTP data, when the application uses HTTPS, right? So encrypted HTTP data is transferred over a secure connection using SSL and TLS. What is SSL and what is TLS? So what is SSL and what is TLS is? You know that already. Yes, are you with me?
Yes, sir.
What is SSL and what is TLS? At least you should know the full form. Yes. SSL stands for Secure Socket Layer and TLS stands for
Port layer.
transport layer security. Right? So both so encrypted data. So when the application uses HTTPS protocol, so your data will be encrypted. HTTP data will be encrypted and transferred over a secure connection using SSL and TLS. Right? And the standard port number for this HTTPS is 443. Please remember these port numbers. Okay. Anyways, you know the definitions, right? So you know the full form of HTTP and HTTPS. Remember the standard port numbers. Okay. So you'll see these numbers in the scripting, guys. Once we go to scripting, right, you'll see these port numbers. When you record a script, you'll see all those details. The next protocol is FTP. FTP stands for file transfer protocol, and it is a standard network protocol used for transfer of computer files between client and server on a computer network. Let's simply remember file transfer protocol. That's enough. That itself is self-explanatory. It is the protocol used for transferring files over the network, isn't it? That's why it is called as file transfer protocol. Guys, guys, are you with me?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
So now let's understand. So we'll discuss these cookies and all once we go to the script, right? I will discuss that. So I want to explain the request response cycle. I think I already covered this CSS and JavaScript, XML and JSON. Yes or no? Did I cover this XML and JSON?
No, sir.
No? Okay. So this is important to understand. Let's go through that, right? So these are the different web page components. We call these as web page components. Okay. You take any website, let's say apple.com. If you right click and view source, right, you will have a lot of web page components. Right click and if you view source, right, so you will see HTML content, isn't it? You'll see this, the document type is HTML, isn't it? Doc type is HTML, and then you see some CSS files, right? Here you go. There are 3 CSV files here, right? And you see JavaScript files, JS files, .js, search for .js. You see some JavaScript files over here, isn't it? Right? And what else, guys? You may see some XML content and JSON content also. You can see it over here. See here, JSON. Right? You may see some XML tags. We have some XML tags. XML language, ENUS. What is this ENUS? Guys, you know that, right? What does this ENUS stand for?
English United
States.
Right. So EN is the language code and US is the country code. US English. This stands for US English. Right. So these are the web page components, right? So CSS, JavaScript, and XML and JSON, right? And clear, guys. And we already know. I already explained what is CSS and JavaScript. I already explained. Now let's understand what is the yes or no, guys. I covered already the CSS and JavaScript.
Yes.
Right. Now let's understand what is the difference between XML and JSON. First of all, XML stands for Extensible Markup Language. You should know the difference at least. What is the difference between XML and JSON? Right? And XML was designed to store and transport data. Just like, JSON is also used for storing and transporting data. Observe here, it is also used for storing and transporting data. However, JSON stands for JavaScript Object Notation. That is the full form of JSON. JavaScript Object Notation, and XML full form is Extensible Markup Language. And remember that both of these XML and JSON are designed to store and transport data only. And difference between XML and JSON is a lightweight format. JSON is a lightweight format. Out of these two, JSON is a lightweight format. So that is why it is so successful. After JSON came into picture, right, XML is becoming obsolete. XML has become outdated and everyone is using JSON now because it is lightweight format. Now let's understand what is meant by this lightweight format. Very important, guys, for you. So we should know like why XML has become outdated and why JSON has become so successful and why JSON response is used for storing and transporting data. Okay. So as I discussed, right? So it is a lightweight format. Now let's understand what is meant by this lightweight format. Yes, is it interesting or is it boring? Friday evening, right?
No, Kishore.
You are in weekend mode. Weekend mood. Are you in weekend mode?
No.
Okay. So I'll be like updating, like I will be uploading today's session as a private video to, to your email IDs, guys. Okay. So I will not be uploading as a public video going forward. Right? Now let's understand what is this, what is meant by this lightweight format. I gave some examples here, some good examples over here, right? Suppose if you want to store and transfer the information about 3 employees like this, right? And if you are using XML, right, this is how the XML tags look like. If you want to transport data means from one application to another application like that. So if you want to transport data using XML, right? So this is how the XML format will be. First, you will have an employees tag, starting employees tag, and then inside that you have again an employee tag. Inside you have first name tag, and this is the closing tag for first name, and this is the opening tag for last name, and this is the closing tag. Right? Again, this is the closing tag for employee. So if you see this hash symbol, that is the closing tag, and this is the opening tag. Okay, and this is the data of one employee. In that way, you will have 3 lines for each employee, and in that way, like how many lines you have in total case? 3 is 9 plus 2, isn't it?
Yes.
Right? So if you see this, right, so the same data of 3 employees, if the developer is using JSON, right, this is how they can transfer the data if they are using JSON. Okay, see, you see here, right, relatively like JSON is now you understood what is meant by lightweight format. It consumes less data case. Okay,
Yes.
suppose if you take this XML format, okay, let me show you something. There is a website called Character Count Online. So if you paste that, any text over here, right, it will measure how many characters are there. How many characters are there, guys? Take a note of it, or else, bookmark it. charactercountonline.com. So this will be very much helpful in performance testing. This is one of the useful websites for when we do this performance testing. Okay. Apart from this, there are a lot of other useful websites like JParser Online and all these. So we'll discuss one by one. As in one, we come across the context. Observe here how many characters are there. You have 286 characters. It is showing how many words are there, and how many paragraphs are there, how many spaces are there, right? Anyways, we are not bothered about this. See this counter. Number of characters is 236. But if you see the same JSON example, let's see the same JSON example, guess how many? Okay, how many characters are there in this? How many characters here? Remember this number 286, right? Now this is JSON format. See here, 146 characters, isn't it?
Yes, 146.
Right? Here, guys. Now you understood what is this lightweight format? What is meant by this lightweight format?
Yes.
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 Right? Now this is a right. So you should remember this example, guys. Okay. You need not remember the syntax, but understand the difference between XML and JSON. Okay. Any queries, or shall we move to the next concept? I'll take your silence as no. Okay. We will cover this SQL basics and all, like we'll cover it later. Okay. So at the end of the training, so we'll see like about this. We'll discuss about this CRUD operations and important queries, SQL queries like select query, update query, delete query. We'll cover this. I'll cover this after JMeter is completed. Right. Now let's understand. Let's move to HTTP response codes. I need to explain some HTTP basics before starting scripting this. That is the reason for this exercise. Okay, HTTP response codes. So what is meant by HTTP? We already discussed that. It is a set of rules for transferring files on the World Wide Web. This is one more definition. Set of rules for transferring files. When you say files, it can be text files, it can be graphic images, sound, video, and other multimedia files on the World Wide Web. And HTTP is an application protocol that runs on top of TCP/IP suite of protocols. And that is the fundamental foundation protocol for internet. The foundation protocol for internet is TCP/IP, over which HTTP runs. HTTP is an application protocol that runs on top of TCP/IP. Okay. Now, what are these different response codes? Let's understand this. So, whenever you send a request, you are sending a request from the server, and this is called as a HTTP request. Remember that this is called as a HTTP or HTTPS request. Actually, here it is HTTPS request. Why it is called as HTTPS request? Guys? It is a secure
That is
site.
security.
Secure data. Secure
Yeah.
data.
So if you see that padlock symbol, right, the connection is secure or the website is secure, right? So it is a HTTPS protocol. So right, and you are sending a HTTPS request to the server. Clear? Now, once you send this request, right, so you will get some response codes. You will get some response codes from the server. Now let's see how to check that response code. So you can open developer tools for that. You know that. I think most of you know that, right? How to check the response code center? Yes or no, guys?
Yes.
I'm refreshing the page and observe here. So this is your main request, isn't it? Apple.com. This is your main HTTPS request, right? And observe here, you got a status code of 200. So what does that mean is the request is processed.
Success are okay.
What is that?
Success or
Right. The request is processed successfully. That's what this response code indicates. If the server is able to process your request, right? So it will send a response code of 200. Okay. And now these are called as response codes. Response codes are status code. And all the HTTP response codes can be broadly classified into 5 types. One is 1XX, which is informational, and 2XX means all the response codes that start with number 2. These indicate success, and all the response codes which start with number 3 indicate some redirection, right? And all the response codes that start with number 4 indicates client-side error, and all the response codes that start with number 5 indicates a server-side error. Okay, and 2XX means here we got what is the response code we got? We got 200. 200 indicates success. That means what does that? And okay, I'll come one by one. So actually, you will not see this 1XX. Okay, so 1XX, but 1XX is nothing but informational. That means request received and continuing process. And 1XX HTTP codes are only meant for information purposes. Browsers or user agents will not process and show this. You can't actually see these response codes. Browsers will not show this response code of 1XX. This is used for only informational purpose. And 2XX stands for success. If your request is processed successfully, right? What does this class of status code indicates? That the action requested by the client was received, understood, accepted, and processed successfully by the server. If the server is able to process your request, then it will send a response code of 2XX, right? And 3XX indicates a redirection. Okay, so I hope everyone knows what is this redirection. Did we discuss
Yes.
previously?
No.
Okay, so let me give some analogy, like let me give some real world example. Okay, suppose you have a business, or your parents own a business, and they are shifting that in a particular location from many years. Let's say, for example, they are running, your parents are they are running some business successfully from many years in a particular location. Now the business has expanded, and your parents want to, or they want to shift it to some other bigger premises, right? So and they want to inform the customers about the change. Okay, they may not be having all the contact details and email address and all. Then what do they generally do, guys? Any business? They are shifting to a new address. For example, someone is shifting a successful business from one location to another location to to a bigger location or another location. Yes. You
Yeah.
might have observed this, right? Yes. Yeah.
Yes, yes, they will post a address like posters, something like.
Right. So they will keep a notice saying that the
Yes,
shop
notice.
has been shifted to some other
Yes.
location. Like right. They'll place a notice saying that the shop has been shifted to so and so address or so and so location, isn't it? So they are redirecting the customers. They are redirecting the customers because they are redirecting the customers who are not aware of the change, isn't it? That is a general example for redirection. Understood, guys?
Yes, sir.
Yes,
Yes.
sir.
Right? Now, in software, like in web, in this context, right, what is redirection? Let's say, for example, there is some change in the URL, or a request should be sent from one URL to another URL, right? And in such cases, whenever there is a redirection from one URL to another URL, or let me give some examples. Suppose you type, google.com, right?
Yeah, you
Okay.
can take payment page in Mitra or something else.
Right. Yes. So when you're trying
yes.
to make some payment in any e-commerce site, right, it will redirect to you to the
Yeah.
payment gateway.
Yes, billing like that, right.
Yeah. Right. So in that cases, you get this 3xx response code. Okay. And the next one is clear, guys. Whenever there is a URL redirection, these response codes are used whenever there is a URL redirection. If the if the client should be like sent to some other different URL, like this, we get a response code of 3xx. Okay. The next one is next response code is 4xx, and 4xx indicates a client side error. 4xx class of status codes indicates a client side error. For that, I will do one thing. I'll show you one sample application which I will share it today to everyone. Okay. So, and which we are going to use for scripting. So our first application for scripting is web tools application, right? And this is I started the server, and this is the URL of that application. Okay. This is the URL of the application. And now observe here, you have sent a request, HTTP request, and your server was able to process the request successfully. And it has returned it will return a response code of 200, obviously, for this index. Wait. Yeah. Index.html, it has sent a response code of 304. Yeah. Because here it is 304. Response code is 304, which indicates a redirection. Okay. Now, this is the actual URL. Okay. Suppose if you send a wrong request by mistake, what you do is by mistake, let's assume that by mistake you have misspelled the URL like this, right? Instead of index.html, you missed a letter and you have sent a request like this, right? And now what you get this is what response code you get?
404.
404 not found, very popular response code, right?
Yes.
You might have seen this, right, previously. 404 not found, right? So all the response codes that start with number 4 indicates client side error. So we have sent an invalid request or a bad request, right? Then you see this response codes that start with number 4. Clear, guys? So what is it saying here? It is saying that this particular HTML file is not available. It is not found with the server because actual request is index.html, right? This is the actual request. Okay. But if you send some wrong request, some invalid request, you get a response code of 400. Clear, guys? That is 404. 4xx indicates a client side error, right? And 5xx indicates a server side error. You might have seen this or this one also. 500 internal server error. Have you seen this anytime before?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. So I have collected some screenshots just to show you. So observe here. 522, it is a connection timeout error. Right. So I got this, error once upon a time, and I collected a screenshot just to show you. Right. So 522 indicates the connection timeout. In the same way, this and 520 indicates unknown error or some server side error. 520. Okay. And in the same way, you have one more error called 1016. Actually, this is 530. Both are one and the same. 1016 and 530 are origin DNS error, right? So these are screenshots of some error messages, and you might have seen that internal server 500 internal server error many a times. isn't it? Yes or no, guys?
Yes.
So in
Yes.
interviews, they will ask, like they may ask you what is 404. I'm getting a 404, or I'm getting 403. 403 forbidden. So what is the issue? What could be the reason? Okay.
Okay.
They may ask you some important response codes like 403. So what could be the reason? 404. What is this 404? Indicates 404 not found. Remember that. 900 is internal server error, right? And 403 is forbidden. So this is a authorization issue. That means user doesn't have permission to access a page. When a user doesn't have permission to access a particular resource, right? We get this 403 forbidden. That page is forbidden. Means that page is hidden from that user, right? And it indicates an authorization issue. Now, what is authentication and what is authorization? What is the difference between authentication and authorization? We'll discuss that later. Okay. I have it in the performance testing slide deck or here. What is the difference between authentication and authorization? But if you want to give a short description, right? Authentication is verifying the credentials of the user. Okay. Whether a user is a valid user or not. That is authentication. And authorization is nothing but verifying the permissions of the user. That is authorization. That is authorization. So we'll discuss this later, okay? But you should know like what is the difference between authentication and authorization. Very important interview question. All right. So what is the difference between authentication and authorization? This is another important interview question. Next. The next thing you have to know after response code is request response cycle. Request response cycle means, shall we continue, guys? Or shall we connect on Monday? Shall we resume on Monday?
Monday.
Okay. Okay. Understand. Okay. So we'll stop it here, guys. So, what are the things that we covered today, guys? Okay. There is your question.
Test plan.
Test plan.
Yeah.
And its components.
Test plan and its components. That is the first topic that we discussed.
And has
Document and its components.
the scripting process.
And HTTP response codes.
XML and JSON.
Yes.
Yeah, XML and JSON. One more
Yes,
important. Right? What is the difference between XML and JSON? All right. So in the next session, I will cover HTTP request response cycle. Please don't miss it. Important one to understand. HTTP request response cycle. So not only for performance testing, every software test engineer should know this, all these basics, right? Request response cycle and response codes. Sorry, response methods. Sorry, HTTP request methods. Sorry, HTTP request methods. That is another important. So with that get, post, put and delete methods, patch method and all this, right? Those are the HTTP request methods that I will cover in the Monday session. All right, then I'll stop the, let me pause record. Okay. So this is the plan for next week, guys, for the next 1 week. So we cover test plan document and its components today and all these concepts. And Monday I will be covering HTTP request response cycle and request methods. And Tuesday I will be covering few basic definitions in PT. And Wednesday, importance of a tool in, or importance of a performance testing tool, and what are the different tools in the market for performance testing and performance engineering. And Thursday, next Thursday, I'm going to start JMeter. I will give an introduction to JMeter and we'll do our first script on Friday, next Friday. So for 1 week from now, we will start our first script with JMeter. Okay. And just for, some good news from one of my students. So she got selected in CTS, as you can see here. Okay. So this is the feedback shared by her. All right. So like, share, subscribe to my YouTube channel. I would like to share this, more and more, offer letters and good news as such. So contact me on this WhatsApp number if someone want to enroll for the training, right? And we are running like online training on Loadrunner and JMeter on weekdays. And I am also giving like real-time project training on weekends in classroom. That would be classroom training in Hyderabad. Okay. So however, for those who are joining online, right? So I will be covering some real-time applications like Amazon and Udemy for them. So those who can attend in classroom training in Hyderabad, they will get some 3 to 4 real-time applications where they can practice all these requirement gathering, test plan preparation, scripting, executions, and analysis and reporting. So thanks for watching and have a nice weekend.